Hello students, this is a short preview of Lecture 13, Communication and Culture, and this is in lieu of class tomorrow, so I'd like you to watch this video and then move into watching A Murder of Crows to complete the in-class activity. So I'll talk more about that. Let's give you my screen so we can get rolling here. So today's lecture is supposed to be communication and culture, and we're going to spend most of the day watching A Murder of Crows. It's a great 50-minute video about culture and communication, learning, culture in crows. It's pretty fantastic. In any case, we are doing this online, obviously, so here we go. I'm going to introduce this topic, we'll talk about culture, and then you'll watch the Murder of Crows video, and then you'll individually complete the in-class activity and submit it today. So we've been talking about animal communication, and we looked at the ways that animals communicate and their functions. We also looked at why most communication is honest, but there is some deceit, and how deceit evolves or how it's maintained. But yeah, animals communicate very effectively. They use communication for all sorts of things, right? From reproduction to alarm, or to defense or alarm, to play behavior, to telling others about their social status, to communicating whole variety of things, and they're good at it. But the next question we might have is, well, animals can communicate with each other, but do they have culture? So what is culture? How do we define it? Down here on the right you can see, oh, maybe you can't see it because my face might be there, but down here on the right you see a picture of what our culture is made up of. You can see kind of all of the things that are involved in producing human culture, things like rituals and customs and practices and communication, our language, our relationships, our values, our expected behaviors. What is culture? How do we define it? The simplest definitions are often like this. Culture is the collective adoption and transmission of one or more behaviors among a group. The collective adoption and transmission of one or more behaviors among a group. Another definition might be the spread of information or behaviors or traditions from one individual to another, through some sort of communication, right? But the spread of information from one individual to another. Or the transmission of a tradition from one individual to another, or from one generation to another. The transmission of information or tradition from one individual to another. That's how we define culture. And we can see then why language is probably so important in our culture, because language is a way for humans to easily transmit information from individuals to individual, to transmit traditions, in our oral language or in our written language, right? Do animals have culture? Oh, sorry, I forgot. Think about all of our cultural traits found in human societies. We tell jokes. We have holidays. We have different foods that are popular in different cultures. I come from a Dutch tradition, right? A Dutch culture, and my mom grew up in the Netherlands. So I have a picture here of what are called puffertjes, little tiny pancakes with powdered sugar on them, butter and powdered sugar. They're delicious, right? That's about the only food cultural thing that the Dutch do, really. The Dutch aren't really known for their foods, right? But foods, our pastimes, our hobbies, that includes our sports and our competitions, But think of all of the hobbies that we do, from gardening to sewing to crafting to, everything that we do. Our rules of behavior, our religions and our beliefs, our knowledge that we pass along, all of these are part of human culture, right? And again, language is so critical in the development of our rich culture, because it allows us to easily spread information or pass information from individual to individual. Do animals exhibit culture? That's the question, right? Do animals exhibit culture? Can they spread information from our traditions, from individual to individual, from generation to generation? Yes, we think they can. We think that some animals exhibit culture for sure. And there's a couple of videos here that you can watch. But for example, we've looked at a video of New Caledonian crows doing different kinds of tasks, and they use tools. But what's interesting is different populations of these crows that are isolated from each other use different kinds of tools. Tools popular in one population are not used in a different population. They use different tools. So how do they figure out which tools to use, and how does this information spread? Well, that's culture. Another good example comes from the humpback whales. Humpback whales have different techniques for catching fish. One of them involves a bubbling, where they basically make bubbles. It might confuse the fish. Another is before they do this bubbling, some populations will slap their tail down hard on the water, and apparently that lob tail, I think it's called lob tail feeding, will draw up some particular species of fish. But different populations have different traditions. That's pretty cool. So we think that animals do exhibit culture. It might be to a different degree than humans, right? It's to a different degree than humans. And I think that's because humans have such rich language that we have a rich culture. Briefly then, if language is so important to culture, what is language and why is it advantageous? As with lots of our definitions, language here includes a whole list of different things. You can come up with 25 different things that are requirements of language. Here are a few that I summarize. Language is a type of social communication. It's symbolic, and it's a structured system of communication. It's organized, it's patterned, it has a grammar. It's arbitrary. We make up names for things that are arbitrary names. Why is this called a table or this called a computer? Who knows? It's generative or creative. Language changes. There are new structures in language. There are new words created all the time. And language conveys meaning about abstract things. It can convey meaning about something that happened in the past, something that's going to happen in the future, or something totally imaginary, right? So language is a pretty phenomenal way to communicate, and there's a section in our textbook on our Agile Gene textbook that focuses on the evolution of language and how perhaps our ancestors developed language and why it was selected over, say, gesturing, which a lot of animals make gestures, a lot of animals make calls, but they don't have this complex language. And even our close relatives, like chimpanzees, don't have this complex language. How did our language evolve from, say, a gesture or a calling type of language? What are the advantages of language over nonverbal communication? Our Agile Gene textbook says, it allows us to communicate in the dark. It allows us to communicate around barriers, right? It frees up our hands so that we're not gesturing. We can communicate verbally while we're using our hands to be, carrying things or making tools or picking berries or whatever, right? It allows us to communicate about just about anything. There's like no limitations with language. This is pretty phenomenal. So animals have culture. Some animals, at least, we know have culture. Do they actually have language? Do any animals fit the criteria for having language? And that is a question that a lot of researchers ask and have asked and continue to ask. Do animals have language? And we certainly don't have the rich language that humans have, right? But do they have some qualities, some characteristics of language? Some researchers say yes. Here are some examples of, or some questions that, about animals, some things about animals that might help us say, is this language? Is this not language? Is this an example of really simple language? What's happening? So let's read these. Forager bees use several complex dances to communicate the distance and location of food to other bees. Is this language? Certainly complex communication. Does it have the characteristics of language? Vervet monkeys produce distinctly different alarm calls depending on the type of predator they have seen. Is this language? Many parrots can be taught to use hundreds of different words and phrases and use them correctly in different contexts. Is this language? Dolphins and whales live in close-knit social groups and make a variety of different vocalizations, including different songs. Is this language? Getting a little closer, isn't it? It seems that animals have some qualities of language. Not all. If they have language, they certainly have complex communication, and they have culture. A lot of animals have complex communication with a culture, but do they have language? That's very much up for debate. Most people say no. They might have some characteristics of language. They can make calls, gestures. They can communicate effectively about immediate issues like food, danger, threat, reconciliation. But we're not sure if this is considered true language. In any case, we do know that animals have rich communication skills. And many animals have a culture and a complex culture. One of the animals that does seems to be crows. So I want you to watch the video called A Murder of Crows. You can link it. It's linked here. It's linked in a variety of places in week 7 as well and on our syllabus. So link on to A Murder of Crows. Watch this 50-minute video. While you're watching it, you can be working on your in-class activity number 5 questions. There are a series of questions that you will answer individually, not as an in-class activity, but individually. So go ahead, watch the video, answer these questions, and then submit your in-class activity as an individual document to our assignment site under in-class activities. And should be good. And I will see you next week for next week's class. Talk to you later. Thanks.